All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to share a little bit more about a project that we've been working on that has seen a lot of global influence and hopefully can also be of interest to you. I'm Molly Gonzales. I am a research assistant professor at Texas A&M University. And our project is improving food safety capacity from afar and how SPS distance learning modules can help advance knowledge across the globe. So modern and reliable food safety systems are critical for countries to ensure access to both safe and nutritious foods for their people, as well as to unlock trade and market access opportunities for their agricultural and food products. So to achieve these goals, the Food Safety for Food Security team in Texas A&M, along with our collaborative partners at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Foreign Ag Service, USAID, and the US FDA work together on behalf of the US government's Feed the Future initiative to develop an international training program on core sanitary and phytosanitary topics, including animal and plant health and food safety. So with our ever-changing world, especially in the past 5 years, we've kind of learned the value of the pivot, and we've seen the globe kind of embrace just what can be achieved within a digital environment. Not only can we deliver quality education and provide vital training that is needed to our friends both domestically and internationally, but we can create a space where these knowledge tools are accessible around the clock and even made available in an offline capacity when someone's in the field and in need of support. So this past year, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of this project, which has seen exponential growth and evolution since it first began in Pakistan. In about 2008, research captured Pakistan's challenges to comply with international plant health standards, particularly the IPPC standards, which were limiting exports of the country's plant-based products. From this need for training and regulatory capacity building, the SPS Distance Learning Program was launched with the goal of strengthening Pakistan's ability to comply with international trade standards for plant-based products. So the implementation of the SPS Distance Learning Program in Pakistan has had a lasting impact on Pakistan's agricultural sector. Through their participation in the program, the country went from facing challenges in exporting mangoes to seeing 100% of their mangoes passing IPPC guidelines. The program inspired changes in policies and the organization of SPS units in both federal and provincial governments. And the country has also seen improved implementation of SPS techniques and procedures in the field, along with increased staff confidence and expanded access of Pakistani products to global markets. The success of this program captured the attention of other countries who are experiencing similar challenges of regulatory capacity building and access to knowledge and materials that could support them as well in reaching their own goals of prospectively increasing trade opportunities, along with promoting food safety and a secure food supply. So on your screen, I kind of have a quick overview of the 5 W's, essentially, of our project and our program. The who that I've shared, the what, and then when things have kind of advanced where they are now, where you can find the materials, and just why. And, as I shared before, just from the impact that was had in Pakistan as a single country, and now the impact that we're seeing kind of on a global level, I'm hoping you'll be interested as well in exploring spscourses.com and how this free suite, and I want to emphasize that it's free access to all who choose to create an account of web-based distance learning modules on sanitary and phytosanitary standards across the plant health, animal health, and food safety topics. So the Pakistan project ended in about 2015. And so in 2017, again, with the continued interest and requests by countries kind of around the globe, we undertook the rigorous task of rebuilding the SPS program. And what this is again, they're web-based distance learning modules that as a whole provide that foundational knowledge that is necessary for those that are in the kind of the regulatory capacity building space. So we rebuilt all of these online plant health modules essentially to meet the needs of the global community. Originally, when they were built for Pakistan, there were examples specific to them. And then when we did the rebuild, we kind of updated everything to be more inclusive of the entire community. So in addition to building a new learning platform to host these updated modules, we built the site spscourses.com to host all of these learning modules and education training materials. So content not only speaks to beginning learners, but is also inclusive of topics and ideas that are relevant to learners with previous experience in the field. Each content presents learning materials through use of multiple modalities, including basic text, infographic, images, videos, case studies, helping make the content more inclusive of different learning styles and preferences. So to date, we have more than 16 different learning pathways that have been developed and are publicly available, including topics such as United States market access, phytosanitary certification, pest risk analysis, and other plant health issues that are vital to safeguarding a country's agricultural production systems and supporting efforts to become better trading partners and players in the international agricultural trading system. So the 14 modules noted on the screen effectively teach how to incorporate and use science-based risk analysis concepts and tools in analyzing, establishing quarantine, and controlling pest diseases in a country. 2 years ago, 2 additional modules covering the topics of food safety and animal health were made available to learners. These modules explore the essential components for modernizing one's food safety system and seek to increase understanding of animal health, disease surveillance, and emergency response measures that could lead to compliance with internationally accepted and science-based food safety standards. So since the modules were released globally in 2018, over 15,000 users have created accounts within spscourses.com across over 150 countries around the world. We're proud to offer this content for free to anyone who chooses to create an account. And with each quarter, the number of users on spscourses.com continues to grow as more countries and groups across the globe seek out this content and seek to boost their knowledge on these topics in our efforts to combat poverty, malnutrition, and hunger. Ensuring a secure food supply is a top priority of countries around the globe, and educating learners in SPS topics is just one more step forward to achieving that goal. And so on the screen, you can kind of see a global map, all the countries that have kind of the green hue to them. The darker the green, the more users that are within that country itself. But you see just how far this program has been able to reach. And whether it's just one person in that country who then serves as the more knowledgeable other and continues to share that knowledge with those around them, we continue to see this program grow and also reach new users again around the globe. So on your screen, you see just if you go to spscourses.com, this is the landing page where you can sign up and create an account, again, for free. And we hope that you enjoy all of the content and the material that has been developed as part of this program. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly. We have 1 minute left in your 10 minutes. So I have one question for you. If you could answer that in 1 minute, where do you see this project going in the future?
For myself personally, I hope we just continue to see it grow. One thing we've seen just even in the past, few years is the request for these modules to be translated in other languages, the development of additional modules, maybe on topics that are, more specific topics, some including like post-harvest handling, and some other areas of interest, especially where we know that there are challenges kind of around the globe. And so I hope that, again, as we continue to have more users access the platform and provide us with that valuable feedback of what they'd like to see or what will be most helpful to them, that will continue to see the program grow in those areas.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking 10 minutes to share with us. I will have you, Molly, stop your screen share, and then I'm going to bring Sophie to the stage. Sophie, hello. Sophie, go ahead and screen share as well. Okay. And then as soon as you're ready, I'll start your timer.
Okay, let me just get, oops, that's not the right one. Hold on, that's my email. Okay.
All right. Presenter view.
There we go. Okay, sorry
Sophie,
about that.
Over to you.
It's always a hiccup somewhere along the line. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Sophie Javers, and I'm the Global Engagement Manager at the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Markets, Risk, and Resilience. And today I will be sharing a little bit about a project that we have been running in Northern Kenya that has been making insurance more fully available for women. And apropos of the ICT for Ag topic, this has been done with the help of digital goats. See here, sorry, let's move forward. Okay, so the program originated with a collaborative research project that was supposed to evaluate the effectiveness of a graduation program, as well as investigate how to protect the development gains and prevent backsliding via a gender-focused insurance product of this graduation program. So we have partners such as ourselves, the Markets, Risk, and Resilience Innovation Lab, along with the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, Takaful Insurance Africa, and the BOMA project, which is the NGO that was running the graduation program. So the graduation program that was run by BOMA was called Rural Entrepreneur Access Project, REAP. Actually, it's not was, they're still working on this. And it was launched in Northern Kenya in 2013. And it was a sequence of gender-focused interventions to build both tangible material assets and intangible psychological assets to bolster the resilience of kind of the most vulnerable women in these pastoralist areas. And so we ran a 4-year randomized control trial, and the impacts that we saw were quite impressive. 320% increase in women's productive assets, 32% increase in family cash income, 510% increase in women's savings. And the longer term effect over a couple of years was that the BOMA program participants had an increase on average of about $400. So very impressive, but there are caveats, right? So what happens, as we all know, the Northern Kenyan region is prone to severe or catastrophic drought. So what happens when a shock occurs that could potentially wipe out those development gains? You invest time, you invest money in these programs, the graduation program, but all of those assets can be wiped out. And we saw that. So using the data from the evaluation, we saw that one kind of standard deviation increase in the shock then reduced the savings and assets. These are purchasing power parity dollars for the women. That's by about $134. So knocking out per kind of standard deviation shock about 25% of their savings. So it's a real issue to think about how we can both build the assets and then also protect them. So that's the question that we asked as researchers: can the combination of these two types of interventions fundamentally alter poverty dynamics for women in a cost-effective way? So by both supporting graduation programs and building assets, but then also protecting them through the expansion of new insurance markets. The problem in this area with being a pastoralist region is that the existing index insurance products are primarily designed for men, focusing on men's crops or livestock. And this, of course, the rationale is that men generally control the primary crops and deal with the primary risks. So the question that we were asking was, well, how do we better understand and then design insurance products that make sense for women who are very much a part of this picture with their varied sources of income and different risk exposures? So the idea to find out more about how we can do this better was to use a digital game, so a lab in the field game, to pilot a new kind of insurance designed to ensure that household expenses can be paid in the event of a drought, speaking kind of more to the women's concerns. And so this game was called Sim Pastoralist. It's available on, I think, the Google Android app platform. And it was led and designed by a current University of San Francisco professor named Andrew Hobbs. And he formed working groups with the enumerators that were participating in the original evaluation project. They collaborated, they WhatsApped, they created all sorts of kind of trainings and design sessions to figure out how best to really represent, using this digital technology, how best to represent the insurance product to then be able to use it in the field. So this is a teeny little picture of our digital goats here. They're very cute. When the game is actually in play, they run around in the field and the clouds cross the sky. And you can either have a drought or a rainy season, and you pick and choose buying goats, selling goats, buying insurance, paying school fees. So it really represents kind of a very real interpretation of kind of what's happening in these pastoralist regions and the decisions that they might be making. And so this is a picture here on the right of a family with the enumerator playing the game. They had 56 different sessions working through this digital game, Sim Pastoralist, 287 couples. The research was trying to look at was how are these families making decisions differently based on the framing of the insurance. So half of them were asked questions about their decision-making about buying the insurance based on whether the insurance is covering livestock. And then the other half of the families were asked questions, the same game, but the insurance was framed in a way that the insurance was covering kind of family expenditures rather than livestock. And so at the end, they discovered that the family framing within the game increased the share of total spending when it was purchased by women by kind of 27%. So the main kind of takeaways that we were able to get by using this digital game first in a cost-effective way was that insurance really resonated with these women, these pastoralist communities. And it showed that kind of resonance with them was really showing that their risk needs were not being met. And that also that there was room for private sector market expansion because there was a group of people within this community that had been served with insurance, but that weren't being reached. So what happened next was, and we have this great comic, which was part of our kind of promotional materials, is that the data collected from this digital game informed a real world launch. So Takaful Insurance Africa saw the results, were very impressed with the potential to both meet the needs of these women in these areas and expand their market. And so they created this gender intentional format based off of the game that was able to emphasize women's risk exposure. And so they used the original groups of women and families from the BOMA graduation program, and they sold the insurance both in the traditional livestock framing and the family unit framing. And what happened was the demand was increased significantly when it was framed as family insurance. And those who already purchased insurance increased their expenditures around insurance to be able to have more, to be able to protect more when it was framed as a family insurance. So what we really see here is that the insurance spoke to women's needs when it did, that it really resonated, and it really gave them a chance to, and the game really gave them a chance to experiment. And we can see that the impacts can be really large. So how do we know that the impacts are large? Well, just quickly in this next graph, we can see kind of why we care about this. So on the left-hand side of the bar, this is again based on the evaluation of the BOMA program. The first bar was the assets that women were able to build up in the absence of any kind of shock. The middle bar, which is about half, is what happens when the women did face a shock. Now, the right-hand bar, the third bar, then shows the assets that are able to be protected by incorporating insurance in with the graduation programming. So you're basically seeing kind of a one-for-one replacement with the shock happening, but then the insurance kind of recouping those losses. So it's a really important results to take away from this. So let's see, here's my next. So the impact on policy here that we have is that the results show that shocks from that last graph we just saw, shocks really devastate women's assets when we take the time to build them up and to really invest money in their empowerment and their resilience. We have to make sure that we protect it. And so in this case, the insurance really largely mitigated that devastation. We also can see that through the data collected through Sim Pastoralist, we were able to reformulate the insurance in a really kind of a cost-effective and precise way to respond to that risk exposure that women are facing. And the understanding that there is this inter-household risk transfer that women fully understand. And then kind of the last kind of ICT for Ag takeaway that I'd like to make sure to point out is that the use of digital technology can really be transformative to the way we understand and design financial products, in this case, insurance, in order to make them fully available to women. And the impacts, as you can see from this example, are really quite impressive. So that's it for today. Hopefully that was lightning fast enough. And if we have time for a question, I'd love to hear one. Thank you.
Sophie, we are at time for a question. I'm so sorry, but that was a wonderful presentation. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to invite Matt to the stage. Matt, you are up, and everyone, Matt will be closing us out here. So thanks, Matt. Take it away.
Great. Thanks so much. I trust you can see my screen. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Matt Sommerville. I'm the Chief of Party of the USAID Integrated Land and Resource Governance Program, which is working across 8 countries on securing land and resource rights. My presentation today is drawn from those experiences. So the starting question is, how many of you have ever rented a house? Have you ever planted a tree in that rental house yard? Probably not, as it's not really yours. Entirely yours. Farmers' most valuable asset is their land, but too often we forget to ask, do they own it? Do they have documentation? How do they access it? Is it through their family, their spouses, their uncles, their parents? Will they have it in 5 years? Are they allowed to fence it or keep a neighbor's goat off of it during the dry season? And does this matter? We're here at this meeting to talk about how to unlock the value of lands and farmers' investment through technology. But are you going to be willing or unable to lock that value if you don't have long-term documented rights? A huge portion of the world's productive land surface is unregistered. Hundreds of millions of people lack documentation to the land that they farm and live on. This leads to conflict, insecurity, and lack of investment. Women are much less likely to own land or feel like they can make decisions on the land that they work. Farmers migrating away from drought zones and establishing new plots are often doing so in marginal areas constrained by existing formal or informal land relations. And USAID is, and other donors are committed to securing rights, including women's rights to land. The beautiful thing here is that the ICT tools that we use can help. The case I want to make today briefly is to unlock your data collected in new ways, particularly your spatial data, to support smallholder farmers and communities that you work with to register and secure their rights to land. Despite the increase in access to GPS-enabled smartphones, smallholder farmers that we're trying to reach still lack these documents. The questions that we're asking in our tools need to be asking questions in new and different ways. To reiterate, if you want to a farmer to invest in land with climate smart practices during the dry season that puts labor, they need to know they'll be able to profit from it in 5 years. If you want a farmer to plant a tree on a farm and perhaps use a mobile app to monitor and incentivize them, they need to have the right to exclude grazing animals from the land or find someone who has out of control fire. If you'd like to provide a farmer with climate information through a smartphone that asks them to wait a few weeks for rains to come, you need to know that by leaving their land fallow for those 2 or 3 weeks, that a neighbor won't come in and encroach on their land. If you want to meet the EU commodity regulations that say you need to prove your product does not come from a deforested plot or from inside a national park, you need to know where that plot is. If you want to provide risk insurance to a farmer, you probably want to know exactly or close to exactly where they live to understand their risk. Though a lot of the tools we have now are not actually designed to do it that way. You may not want to collateralize your $150 loan to a farmer to go through the process of repossessing land in the case of a default, but I bet you're reducing your exposure if you know that your farmer and where they're lived and how much assets typically tied to land that you have. Smartphones can and do support all of these key steps for rights recognition at the community and household level. This includes important steps of collecting information on individuals, their relationship to the land, the boundaries of their land, going through verification and validation processes with witnesses, integrating this data through databases and linking them to broader services, both financial and government land administration services. And all of this information is hugely useful for the ag sector and ag businesses. Ag apps are gobbling up huge amount of data that from the farmers they're sourcing from to make things more efficient and provide services. But I'd argue that the best way to make it useful for the farmers is to help use this to secure their rights. Align our data collection with rights recognition processes. I've seen so many ag-focused decision-making apps just ask a question, do you own the land? But without understanding the lease agreements, what you're legally allowed to do, et cetera, it becomes more complicated. So why does this link not happening? In many countries, rights exist, but the registration processes are hard to access, costly, distant. They require unclear administrative procedures. Beautiful thing again, there's tools out there. I'm not selling or advertising any single one of them. Open source, commercial companies, platforms, targeted systems. USAID is invested in mapping approaches to secure tenure. The FAO has developed the solutions for open land administration, the social tenure domain model from UN Habitat. There's companies, NGOs, a set of other platforms, Cadasta, Medici, Meridia, partnering in the cocoa sector, Medim, Smartland, Spatial Collective, Suyo. They're out there. And some governments are even helping to align these sort of bottom-up local collected data to national administrative systems. Why are we doing it? You reduce the time for processing. You can reduce the cost dramatically through mobile data collection, localized services with local community agents, clear workflows. One of the big problems with accessing documents is often bureaucratic steps and uncertainty, and scaling up systematic documentation. Where I work in Zambia, about 10,000 document titles are registered every year. Seems like a lot, but there's an estimate of 4 million unregistered parcels in the country. At that pace, it's going to take 400 years to document rights. So basically what I want to do is present 3 quick examples of how we've been doing this. There's reasons that land documentation certification doesn't happen, but it's really important that we link our systems and approaches to government systems or community level platforms. First example I want to highlight from USAID is taking the case of Medal in Mozambique, a huge colonial company that at one time was the world's 4th biggest coconut producer. Following a coconut blight and the decimation of the plantation, communities that had long been kept out of the company's land by armed guards started growing at night on the company's land. With new owners recognizing that they can't continue to be confrontational, we worked with the company to see these landless populations not as encroachers, but as suppliers. We use land documentation through mobile tools to help document spatial long-term contracts to bring an in-grower model where households could rehabilitate the land and receive a market for their products, turning encroachers into suppliers. And rather than opening land to new open access encroachers, they're now expanding this partnership model to other areas. Take the case of M Finance in Zambia, where a microfinance company partnered with a customary chieftain to provide agricultural loans based on land certificates and gave the company the security to know their farmer and also develop partnerships on how much inputs to provide based on farm size and emerging credit history. Building these back and forth databases and information on land certificates gives farmers the ability to navigate with companies and with your groups. In Ghana, customary practices around cocoa farms, which are long-term rental agreements, have long followed a process where renters have the farm for the life of a cocoa tree. So basically, once you cut your cocoa tree, you lose your rights to the land. Companies were confused why farmers didn't want to rehabilitate their farms, which were producing just 20% of what they could do with their aging trees, not realizing that most of their farmers were renters and that investing in rehabilitating meant those renters actually losing their rights to the land. So we worked with the farming groups to produce contract templates for long-term rehabilitation for these rental farmers and worked to help secure the documentation of the original land rights owners who were initially wary of giving longer-term rights to renters. Finally, take the case of Ilovo Sugar, a plantation in Mozambique, where initial assessments realized that there's this plan to develop dams and more irrigated area. If those developments went forward, the analysis realized that people would be a high risk that those existing farmers who lack documentation would be pushed off the land through coercion or below market value land sales. So basically, as we're investing at these local areas to increase the value of farms, increase the value of farming, we need to help secure the existing rights of the existing populations. In conclusion, digital tools like the mobile approaches for securing a tenure allow us to get there, whether they're registered in a national system or through contractual arrangements. Donors and national governments need to engage with and open up these agricultural tools to the land administration tools as well, generating these sorts of benefits. My call to action for the Ag ICT folks is engage with land administration systems, fit for purpose documentation to secure rights, better understand how your data can be used to support community participation in supply chains. When you work with farmers, understand whether they own the property and what that ownership actually means for them. Use that land rights data not to exclude people. For example, you find that someone's growing within a national park or on deforested areas, but to find ways to bring people into your supply chain. When you're registering rights, don't discriminate against people who may not actually own the land that they're producing on. Ensure that you're recording the rights of multiple individuals, ensuring that you have space for women, for spouses, for other family members in a contract. And train your extension officers in land rights and gendered impacts so that they're asking the right questions. Often that means hiring women in positions that are typically dominated by men. Once people have documented rights, they're able to negotiate on their own terms. And basically that's the key. You unlock the freedom for negotiation. And mobile tools have the potential to unlock that if we build on this immense investment in productivity and information and link it to land rights documentation. That's all. I'm supposed to now end this session, but if anybody's still here, you're welcome to just ask questions to any of us. I won't hog it if I can figure out how to get here. Great. Are there any other questions from the audience? I think you can raise your hands. Or we no longer have audiences anymore either. Oh, great. Ratha. Do I actually need to unmute you or something? Maybe you could even put in the chat. Try to unmute yourself. Rats. So they gave me the rights, but without giving me the right to control participants. Oh, wait, maybe I can. Ratha. Great. Let me just find you here. Perfect.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for amazing presentation. I was wondering, how do we, get trust from smallholder farmer to understand what the USAID is trying to show them, and not really show them, like to assist the society to get used to how the developed world are doing now, and in particular, how do we get trust, or in terms of like benefit from what the development partner try to assist those country to get to understand the vision of the sustainable development goals set by the UN. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I presume it's pitched it myself, but you are absolutely correct. It's all based on trust, and building that trust is hugely important. It's often something that takes years and is one of the main reasons for USAID's localization agenda, to work through local partners who already have trust, or maybe building that trust, and also understand how it can be strengthened over time. But you're right that the relationship between communities, households, companies, and government, particularly when it comes to land, in my opinion, is based on history. decades, centuries of history between people, colonial governments in many cases, companies and current governments. And in basically finding those champions who can negotiate and work together, and finding a champion, in my experience, has been the greatest. And then champions who can act as amplifiers within their communities will often be the right thing. And anything that requires trust, if you push too hard, you lose trust. So in as much as we have tools that we think are fit for a service, you need to be ready to wait. And that can be hard when you're, particularly those of us who work with USAID 5-year programs, because it's a challenge. But I don't know if anybody else wants to highlight that. And there are indeed other sessions, so I don't mean to hijack the the meeting. You're allowed to leave at any point, but we will close when anybody wants to close. I thought it was a really great, interesting discussions on insurance and how to market insurance and communicate and build trust by marketing it in the right place. And when I was working on that insurance product, people were saying, yeah, ag insurance is great, but we really need is funeral insurance, and no one will cover us for funeral insurance because that's the biggest shock, as you noted, that's actually going to undermine family assets many times. But yeah, hugely interesting. Any other questions or thoughts? I'll encourage people to visit USAID's LandLink site, which I would put in the chat, but can't multitask. And yeah, otherwise, thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting. I guess I can thank Molly and Sophie. It's been great to get to know you over the past 45 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt, for closing us out.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everyone in the room still.